With plenty of needs to fill, the Kansas State women's basketball team finally get an addition in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. We are diving into a women's basketball talk on this one, a little bit more portal chatter, if you will. Love it. Love getting into the transfer portal talk. And this side, we have a lot to talk about when it comes to the women's basketball team. Today, we're going to dive into those portal additions and departures on the women's side and what's all that's left to do as they head into the offseason, because there is plenty of shoes to fill. I mean, this is no exaggeration, folks. There is a lot of things to do for the women's side, for Jeff Mittie and his coaching staff heading into the new year. This is going to be a completely different team, and I'm not even saying that lightly, than we just saw with the Sweet 16 team. There is no doubt about that. Like, absolutely, without question. I'll tell you how serious that is in just a moment. But first, we got to talk about the good. The coming in here, Ramiya White transfers in from Virginia Tech, and it's an exciting piece, in my opinion. I'm really excited for her to come in. She originally signed with Kentucky. She was considered the number one center out of the state of Kentucky in 2024. She committed to the Wildcats of Kentucky and then decommitted and wound up going to Blacksburg, to Virginia Tech, to be a Hokie. She provided some points there, didn't get a lot of playing time in her freshman season, but when she was there, she did average 1.4 points per game. She also averaged just under 2 rebounds per game and shot 37.5% from the field. Saw only just a little bit of playing time. Most of that came in the WBIT against multiple different teams for Virginia Tech. They wound up, I think the last game she played was on March 23rd against Texas Tech, where she saw just 1 minute of play. Let's look at her minutes right now as we go through the season. And it looks like the most that she played was at the very beginning of the season in non-conference play, and she got 11 minutes worth of time. And that's the most that we saw on the court for White. Freshman, 6'5", out of Louisville, Kentucky. As I mentioned, 1.4 points per game. But you have a feeling that she's going to make hopefully some impact this next season, and she might not have a choice otherwise, because there are plenty of holes to fill on this roster based on just everything that has happened over the past few days with this, not only the transfer portal window opening, but so many players leaving because of eligibility reasons. It's just going to be a lot of new faces on Kansas State's women's basketball team. And that's not a terrible thing, although you just had a great run of players. But when you hear the ones coming in, you talk about the recruiting class we're going to dive into just a minute, and the past production and success that we've seen from Coach Mittie in his staff, I guess I'm not too worried, but anxious is probably a good word. I'm anxious to see what is going to be built and who's going to actually stick around, who's able to stick around, and what does that mean for the future. This is a team that now doesn't have just Sweet 16 aspirations. You have to think that level is a little higher. Even if there's only a few people returning from that Sweet 16 team, you got to think that those aspirations are still at that same level. The expectations got to be just as high. At least I think that's the case, and I'm expecting the coaching staff to feel the same way as well. You're bringing in one of the best recruiting classes in arguably maybe program history, and now you have the opportunity to reload, retool, whatever the case it might be, and make that happen. But overall, really excited to see what we get from Ramiya White. I got an opportunity to just look at a couple highlights before I came on. YouTube had a couple of her from her high school as well. Saw some things on Twitter X just in her few minutes of playtime at Virginia Tech. One highlight I did see was a nice pass inside to the post, and she kind of had, dare I say, a little bit of Ayoka Lee looking type play with the nice little hit off the backboard and in after a nice pass into the post. It looked kind of like that. I'm just saying it gave me flashes of it. So, I mean, that would be pretty cool if we wound up getting something like that. But overall, 6'5" freshman, going to make some big impact times, probably going to have some big impactful minutes as well coming down the road here. And the reason I say that is because when you look at what is left right now, it's not much. And when I mean not much, we're talking potentially only one returning player on the team from last season, from the Sweet 16 run. There is a potential, what I mean by player, that actually played any type of minutes this past season would be the only player returning for Kansas State. There is a true potential that could happen. After this addition of White, there were some players that decided to leave. Now, the news came out before and after White's commitment, if you will, on social media. I'm sure it had a little bit to do with this commitment, with this transfer in, because some of the players were did play center, did play the 4 or the 5. So I want to get to that in just a moment here, because there are a lot of portal exits and we have to dig into all of them. And I'm talking not just one, not just two, but there are 6 portal exits that we need to discuss. So let's do that now. Let's take a break just quick early and get it over with. And then let's head on and dig into this right here on Locked On Kansas State. Well, get the supplies you need from the site made from the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, well, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. So join that Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, if you use the promo code SH5, you can get 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. And welcome back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. Do me a favor if you're listening to this one and you're not subscribed. Click that subscribe button. It's free. It only takes just a second to do so, and it helps me so much. Helps me keep my job, gets us out to a lot of Kansas State folks as well in the algorithm. It does a lot more than you know just from you clicking that left button on your mouse, or just a little thumb button if you're watching on mobile. So thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. We're diving into portal chatter here with the Kansas State women's basketball team. We got Ramiya White transferring in from Virginia Tech just last year. She was the #1 center out of the state of Kentucky, was about to commit to an SEC school, winds up going to the ACC and plays one season with the Hokies. And now we'll head to Manhattan to play with Jeff Mittie in the Big 12. Exciting stuff, really exciting stuff. But more has to come. And this is not a knock on White. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited to see her play. And just the little highlights I saw, and just knowing what we saw from Ayoka Lee and what Jeff Mittie has done with this offense and defense over the past few seasons, you can see the reason why that she is a type of player that his coaching staff would recruit. So I'm excited for the addition. But you have to think about what's next. And the reason behind that is because there has been 6 portal exits from Kansas State's women's basketball team so far. As of right now, heading into Wednesday morning, 6 players have left the transfer portal. And it's not going to get much higher because there's not that many players left on the roster. Let's dive into these ones. Finley Onstad hit the portal. Amani Lester was one of the most recent ones to leave in the portal. Gisela Sanchez, Briley Glenn, Eliza Maupin, and Z Walker all leaving in the portal. Sanchez and Lester, I'm guessing the reason that we saw those, they were the most recent ones we saw leave the portal, or for the portal, excuse me. I'm guessing it had something to do with White. Maybe the coaching staff laid out the idea of what they're planning on doing, and it just didn't fit in there. I'm not sure. I don't know. Um, Sanchez had some up and down times during her career at Kansas State. One of the most recent was having multiple turnovers in that first quarter, in that, or excuse me, in that first half during the tournament. And that's the last taste that we get from Sanchez. Amani Lester, I think, was supposed to have a bigger impact on this team. Kennedy Taylor stepped up, I think, took that from her. And maybe that is why she's leaving in the portal as well, to try and get some more playing time in her final season. White was absolutely necessary to bring in the portal, because not only did you lose Lester and Sanchez, Eliza Maupin was also one to leave in the portal. She left very early. She was one of the first to hit that as well. The biggest sting, in my opinion, is Z Walker, because I did think that there was a spot for her on this team, and I thought that having her and Taryn Sides to really take that next step forward and, I guess, carry the torch from Serena Sundell and Ayoka Lee and Jalen Glenn would be those two. But Z Walker decides to hit the portal. I'm expecting her to land in a great spot. I'm sure she'll stick into the Power Four. Personally, I think that will happen. We'll let you know what happened. None of these have committed. None of these 6 players have committed to another school, at least to my knowledge as of right now. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comment description below, but I have not seen that so far. Z Walker's defense was fantastic. Her defense was absolutely amazing, and that is something that is going to be dearly missed, without question, heading into the new season. So the passing of the torch will just go to, it looks like, Taryn Sides. And Taryn Sides could be the only player that returns to Kansas State this season. As of right now, she's not going to hit the portal, and I don't think that's going to happen. She actually came out with a post. There was some rumors swirling around social media that she would also hit the portal as well. The next day, there was a post that said that she was committed to Kansas State, and she made sure that came out. So I'm guessing she's not going anywhere. And it would probably be a really weird situation if she would now. But I think she's here to stay, and that's great, because she's an excellent shooter. I think she played the guard position well. I think she played it better than Walker did. Defense was better on Walker's side for sure, but there's not many in the country, dare I say, that has better defense than Walker. But overall, I think Taryn Sides is a great point guard, and we'll see what she can develop into, guessing that she will probably be in the starting lineup heading into the new season. The reason I say that she might be the only player that gets minutes, and if you look at it, we talk about 6 transfers that head out from Kansas State. You also have 4 players with no eligibility left: Ayoka Lee, Serena Sundell, Jalen Glenn, and Tamyra Poindexter. Well, that leaves only just a few players left that actually played in a game this season. And that is Taryn Sides, who averaged 24.5 minutes per game in her 35 games played. And then there's Kennedy Taylor. In her 36 games, she averaged 12.6 minutes. And Kennedy Taylor is trying, hopefully she hasn't hit the portal. She's trying to get back, but there needs to be a waiver for her to return to Kansas State. If she can come back, I think that would be huge, because we started to see her kind of light up towards the end of the season. And of course, when Ayoka Lee was injured, I think she stepped up big time as well. Having her back to, share minutes with White right off the bat just would be amazing, and have Taryn Sides and Kennedy Taylor lead the way. We'll see if there's a waiver. We'll see if she can get that. If so, I think that's a huge step forward for Kansas State, especially for everything else that they do plan to bring in this next season. Because right now, you only have Taryn Sides that has played valuable minutes, any type of minutes, this past season. Let's assume that the waiver does not go through for this type of conversation real fast. Let's just assume that Kennedy Taylor unfortunately does not get a waiver, and eligibility runs out. She joins Lee, Sundell, Glenn, Poindexter into that category. So that means that there will be 11 players that will no longer be on Kansas State that played any type of minutes this past season. What will that mean? Will that mean that there will only be 8 players on the roster? 8. One will be Taryn Sides, and out of those 8, she would be the only one that played at all last season. You're bringing in 4 freshmen. For the record, those are 4 very good freshmen. Foy, Spicer, Garcia, Harold. They're all going to be very, very good. And then you have Parks and Hess, who were injured and did not play. Medical red shirts or just red shirts, I'm guessing, whatever the case is. I don't know the actual terminology, but they did not play because they were still recovering from surgeries, and they missed all of last season. So you have Hess, who's going to be a sophomore, and then Parks, who's going to be a junior. We haven't seen any minutes from Hess in the Kansas State uniform. Parks played, I think, 9 games in her first season before redshirting, and then redshirting again this past season. So there you go. And then White, the player you just brought in. That's your roster right now, as it sits. 4 freshmen, Hess and White as your sophomores, who haven't played at Kansas State. White's only averages 2 points per game right now, only getting a small amount of minutes. Hess hasn't played any minutes at the Power 4 level. Taryn Sides, who is going to arguably have to be your leader unless you bring in some sort of veteran in the portal, which is possible. And then Parks, who hasn't played in 2 years. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done with this Kansas State roster. And I'm sure it's going to happen. You're not going to get a player like an Olivia Miles or something like that. She just recommitted or committed to TCU. And for the record, TCU looks like they're loading right back up. And that's in the Big 12. So right when you thought you were one of the top teams in the Big 12, and I'm not saying it still can't be that way, other teams are in a different window right now, and they're taking full advantage of it. This easily could be a year where Kansas State slightly takes a step back, where Sweet 16 expectations might not be met. And for the record, it was the first time we made it in over 20 years. Not making the Sweet 16 every year is probably not going to be realistic, right? But we can dream and we can hope. But the way that the roster is set up right now, you're trying to build back up for the next year or 2 years moving forward. You're trying to grow as a unit once again, bringing in 4 amazing recruits, amazing prospects, and obviously trying to rebuild what you had with Serena, Sundell, and Ayoka, players that could play at the professional level. So there's a lot to talk about, and there's still a lot to dig into as we talk women's basketball all offseason long. We're definitely going to speculate. There's no doubt about that. But we'll talk about some new additions when they come in because they're bound to happen. They have to happen. 8 players is just, there's no way, right? And you get 15 scholarship players right now. They usually only stick with 14. They kind of always keep one open. That's kind of been how they've done things in the past. So you're still looking at, most likely, assuming that Taylor doesn't get a waiver, and if she does, then you just take one off the board, but you're still looking at 5 to 6 additions heading into the new year, whether that's somebody else, another freshman, or more pieces in the portal. So I would assume that over the next week or so, there's going to be a lot of traffic hitting Kansas State on the women's basketball side. Hopefully the men's too, for the record, but I think definitely we're going to see it on the women's side because it absolutely has to happen. I brought up Sundell and I brought up Lee, and I said how some of those players can be professional players. They both could be. There's no doubt about that. Let's finish up this show with really what's next for those two. And they're going to go in 2 different directions. Let's finish that up right here on Locked On Kansas State. Locked On Kansas State is here. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and I appreciate it. Once again, hit subscribe if you haven't already. We are continuing on and bringing you Kansas State content every single day. So thank you so much. Again, I brought it up yesterday, but I'd like to bring it up again. If you have a question for the show, I'd like to start building in a mailbag episode if we get enough traction and enough questions. I'd love that. So just leave me a comment in any YouTube video. It comes to my feed. I see the notification and I can add that to my tracker, or you can hit me up on Twitter X at Locked On K State. Love to have that happen. So just drop me a question, drop me a line, and we can make it an episode or at least a segment or something like that. Ayoka Lee is hanging it up. And of course, we know that she's no longer going to be a player for Kansas State after running out of eligibility, but she's also just going to take a next step forward in her life, in her career, and she will forego the WNBA draft and explore life away from basketball. She put out a really just a beautiful speech or post, if you will, on social media to Kansas State. And it was directed to the Kansas State family. And I won't read the entire thing, but she talked about how, coming to Kansas State as a 17-year-old, highs and lows, knew that, talked about their injuries, reflecting on the past seasons, being proud of all she accomplished. And she said that she's going to forego the draft and explore this next season of life apart from basketball. I am extremely thankful for the support and love that I've felt from our fan bases over the years, and I'm excited to see what God has in store for me. I am forever honored to be a Wildcat. I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, what she's done, she's retiring with NCAA records. Super impressive. I mean, in the same era as how everybody talks about Caitlin Clark bringing all the records around. Well, she doesn't have one of them. And Ayoka Lee gets to carry that one. And I'm sure that one is going to be really tough to break for quite some time. And she did that as a freshman too, right? And it wasn't even against a slouch team. It was against Oklahoma. Pretty impressive for Ayoka Lee. And she's already has I think a family therapy practice. I think if that's what is correct. And she was already doing that during the season as well. So it's a really interesting career for her. And I'm really excited for her next step. And, good luck. I think it's a really cool thing that she gets to do that. And unfortunately, I'm guessing that some of the injuries, especially the foot injuries that happened over the past season, has probably explained or probably helped her make that decision. Because, life doesn't get any easier when you get older, right? If you're listening to this and you're out of college, right? You probably got a pack of ibuprofen somewhere. Your back probably squeaks like the Tin Man these days every now and again. Knees start squeaking. Okay, I can tell you that from experience. But really excited for Ayoka Lee, and I hope everything happens in the future. And I'm sure we will see her at basketball games, especially probably the first basketball game of the season next year, because I'm guessing they're going to put her jersey up in the rafters. On the flip side, though, Serena Sundell, the other Kansas State Wildcat legend on that women's basketball team, that Sweet 16 run team. Well, it looks like she's going to test her stuff in the WNBA draft. And Bleacher Report just came out with their final mock draft for the WNBA draft. That draft is Monday, by the way. I think it's 7:30 Eastern time is when it said it on ESPN. It's crazy sports we got coming on here. We got the Masters this weekend, WNBA draft on Monday. And you got, I think, WrestleMania the next week. And then there's NFL draft the following week. Hey, look, April's loaded with main events, if you will, right? And you just had the national championship this past week. So, but Serena Sundell is mocked to go in the first round, just barely. Pick 12, the final pick of the first round. Serena Sundell is mocked to go there to the Dallas Wings. That's pretty cool. That's exciting. I think the only downside there is that Dallas Wings have the first overall pick and the 12th overall pick. And they're predicted to also draft point guard Paige Beckers. So Beckers and Sundell getting drafted the same team as the mock there. Who knows if that impacts Sundell's playing time? Surely think it would if that was the case and she was drafted there. I'd almost want her to get one pick later in the second round and maybe get drafted somewhere else. But I'm excited to see her in the WNBA because I think she can be a great asset at the professional level. And we heard that from USC's head coach at the end of the game when they lost to USC, saying that Serena Sundell, there's a spot for her that belongs in the WNBA. And I'm excited to see that this coming season. And if you are missing basketball and the perfect WNBA comes at a perfect time when there's no football on, there's no basketball on, you'll be able to root for Kansas State's very own Serena Sundell. Plenty to talk about moving forward this week. We're going to have another interview, another press conference from Coach Kleiman and some players. We'll dive into that and talk about what we've seen so far from spring practice and what they've been talking about. We're starting to see some roster cuts happen. 105 is still a number that is yet to be determined, if you will, at roster size. And we'll talk about that with the looming hearings and looming decision with Capitol Hill and this whole revenue sharing thing with the NCAA. And just so much more. We got plenty of stuff. Portal talk is not going away anytime soon. And as soon as the portal talk goes away for basketball, it opens right up for football. So we got plenty of stuff to talk about here. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez as your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level. DJ Giddens, can't wait. Jacob Parrish. I mean, come on now. That's going to be really exciting to hear those names called. Get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. So find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Please like the video. Please subscribe. And this has been Locked On Kansas State.